Well, good evening. My name is Father Ryan Browning. You may remember me. I was here about 5 years ago as a seminarian, about the same amount of hair, but I didn't have the beard, so maybe that could throw you off a little bit. But I'm here this weekend to personally invite you to the mission that begins tomorrow night, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night at 7 p.m., that I'm going to be preaching. And I'm going to be preaching it on happiness. But first, a little story that happened to me as soon as I got here. So I came last night and got into the rectory about 3:30 to drop stuff off and get ready for the 4:30 Mass out here. And of course, the first person I run into is Father Kutnik, right? Of course. And he said, "Well, what are you preaching on, and what's your mission on?" And so I explained it all to him, and he said, "That's great. But here's what you need to do." So he went ahead and rewrote all my stuff in about 30 minutes. But he said, "Here's what you need to do. Get up there and tell me you got 3 points. You're probably going to hit 5. You got 4 tangents and a stream of consciousness." And I was like, okay, that's Father Kutnik. Plus, I wanted to do my imitation of him because when I was here before, I wasn't a priest, so I couldn't get away with it. But now I can. And it was even better when he was sitting over there, when he was celebrating Masses today, although I feel there will be repercussions for this. That's okay. But I'm here to preach about happiness. Isn't it an awesome word? And yet, is there anybody in here that doesn't want to be happy? I think we all, deep down, we want happiness. It's just, what is it? What is happiness? And the reason I'm preaching on this, by the way, is because it's very personal for me. So when I grew up Catholic and went through all the sacraments and everything else and hit college and just fell away from practicing my faith and just kept sliding away. And I was down in Florida, about the 10th year of this. I was down in Florida working as a golf pro, and I was doing this thing that I really love to do. And I was, seeking after the things of the world, right? The pleasure, power, money, fame, honor, whatever, name it. All those things that the world tells us is going to make us happy. Movies, television shows, they all point to these same things. And they say, well, if you just have these, then you're going to be happy. But what I found in my own experience was that I would wake up every morning and be like, what am I doing? Why am I miserable? And I, at that point, didn't have enough to reflect on what was going on. But by God's providence, I decided, it's time for a change. So I moved back closer to my family, who were in Batavia at the time. And you know what you do, right, young folks, when you're moved back close to your mom and dad, especially your mom? When she says she'll meet you at Sunday Mass, you show up at Sunday Mass. That's what you do. There's no question about it. So I started going back to Mass. And little by little, God broke into my life. And this question that had always been there, like, what is happiness? Where do I find it? Began to well up, and I began to study it. And it's nothing new. It's nothing that I came up with. It goes way back, all the way back to the 2,500 years ago with the great philosophers of Plato and Aristotle, and on down through the line of the great saints that we've had in the Catholic Church. They always talk about these deep desires of our heart, that desire to be happy. So we need to figure out what happiness is. As a matter of fact, every action that we do, everything that we choose, we only choose it because we think it's going to make us happy. And when it doesn't, sometimes we're surprised. We're like, why am I unhappy? I'm choosing the things that I think are going to make me happy. So we need to get a good definition of what is happiness. What's it look like? So that we can figure out what choices we need to make to actually achieve and receive full happiness, satisfaction, contentment. So that's what we're going to look at the first night of the mission. We're going to look at what is happiness. Are there different levels to it? What's going on? What are the desires of my heart? What's it connected with in our life? Are there some things that get us into kind of this discontentment, this comparison game in our life? How do we get out of that? We're going to look at all of those things and kind of figure out what's going on. The second night, we're going to look at what are the obstacles to happiness. If we know what it is, then what are the obstacles to it? So we'll look at sin, of course, but one of the more difficult ones is suffering. Does suffering match up with happiness? Is it incompatible? or is it compatible with it? What does Jesus teach us about suffering? What does our Catholic faith teach us about suffering? How does it match up in this idea and in trying to find true happiness? That'll be our second night. Our third night is once we get these things into place, we're going to very practically look at ways to live for true happiness and to encounter different things along the way. But there are certain things that we can do in our life that put us on that path to true happiness, and we can experience it even in this life. But of course, it always directs us to that eternal life where happiness is happiness without end with God. But there is a way of experiencing that even here. And we're going to look at those practical ways of what we can do to make that happen. So that's going to be kind of the extent of the mission, what it's going to look like. And I think it matches up pretty well with our gospel this weekend. And we didn't plan it that way. It just happened to be on this weekend that everything worked out, the timing worked out. But we have this woman at the well. And the only question that I have about the woman at the well is, what allowed her to encounter God? How did she encounter Jesus at that well? Simply, she just needed to be at the right place at the right time. So maybe, just maybe, your right place and your right time is Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 7 p.m. right here in this church. Could be. Because I know Jesus has got something for each of it. It's not going to necessarily come from something I say, but Jesus always works through his ministers. He has got something for each and every one of you that come to this mission. Mainly because it's a universal calling, right? We all desire to be happy. All of us experience these deep desires in our heart that we sometimes don't know where to find the fulfillment of. And we need to know what those are. We need to be able to direct our lives in a certain way and make actions in a certain way that lead us to those fulfillment of those deep desires. But we all experience it. So you're going to get something out of it, one way or the other. And Jesus is going to give you something special. He's always got something for us when we show up and when we give him a little bit of that time. It'll be about an hour each night or so, and we'll just dig into this. It'll be a wonderful thing. It's something I'm very passionate about. I love talking about this because I can see light bulbs go on. It really is, once you figure it out, kind of common sense. We all experience it, and when you can put words to it, it just makes it come alive. And it's for all ages. And even if you have a really happy life, like, you can pick up some tools that you can share this with others. So you're going to get, everybody will get something out of it, everybody that comes. And it's a beautiful thing because maybe you've got this great family, a great job, and you've got a loving spouse. And yet, in those quiet times in your heart and those quiet times of prayer, seems like there's something missing. Like, there's just something more that maybe there's that God's calling you to. So what is that? Because happiness directs us in what we believe about our purpose, about our dignity, about our destiny. So those are big questions that are always kind of swimming around in our heart, especially in those moments of silence. We begin to recognize those. So what do we do with that? How do we go down that path that leads to those answers to the deepest questions of our heart? That's what we're going to study. That's what we're going to get into. We're going to have a lot of stories, a lot of fun, and a lot of good content, I think, basically because it's not mine, right? I'm just sharing what I know from others who are way smarter than me, but I love to share this. So be like that woman at the well. Just be in the right place at the right time and encounter Jesus.